Well, good evening, YouTube. This is Chuck, and it's still Sunday, March 3rd, 2024, and it's later on in the evening. And as you can tell, I'm coming to you from the man cave, and it's actually a little chilly out here. I got my little heater right there, keep me warm, and I'm wearing an old geocaching shirt. I dug it out because it's got long sleeves, and I was into geocaching for a while. I actually had some out, and I finally got tired of it, and so I don't do it anymore. But for a while, I was traveling all over the central Arizona mountains going to geocaches. But the what my story is tonight, and this is going to probably end up being a little bit long because it's got a lot of moving parts. But the one of the things us folks do when you live in a town for a long time, and when you get the newspaper, one of the things you take a look at is you take a look at the obituaries. And our paper comes out on Tuesday and Friday, and one of the things that was in Friday's paper was an obituary about Ned Shaw. Now, none of you guys will probably know Ned Shaw, but he lived here for a long time, just like I have, and he was a teacher over at the high school, and I lived pretty close to high school, and anyway, he was kind of a fixture over there for many, many, many years. Very popular teacher. And he passed away here, about a week or so ago, I guess, at the age of 72. So he's slightly younger than I am. But my story isn't about Ned, actually. My story is actually about his mother. And his mother's name was Merri, and not Mary. It was Merri. And that pretty well described her, actually. She was a little tiny thing and was kind of a dynamo, full of energy. She passed away about 10 years ago as well, but the story I'm going to tell you takes place back around the year 2000, actually. And at the time, I was managing a 4x4 tour company that was actually owned by a couple friends of mine. And they wanted to get the business started, but neither one of them were Jeepers and neither one of them were history buffs. And I was a little bit of both. And so when they first opened it up, I started driving for them a little bit, just as a side gig, side hustle, they call it now, to have something to do, to enjoy it. And finally, they ended up asking me if I would manage the company. And so I told them I would. I was trying to help them get it off the ground because they didn't have a lot of money into it. And the biggest expense on something like that is insurance. Insurance will kill you. But we only had 2 trucks, and so I ended up driving a lot of the trips. I had 2 or 3 guys that would drive for me if I needed them. But anyway, Mary Shaw, Ned's mom, she was an aspiring author. She wanted to write a book. And she wanted to write a book about the women of the pioneer Arizona women. And there's several books out there about that. And one of them that she particularly liked, and she kind of wanted to pattern her book after it, was a book written by Martha Summerhays called Vanishing Arizona. And sounds like it might be a modern book, but it's really not. Martha Summerhays was the wife of a cavalry lieutenant back in the territorial days here, during the Indian Wars. And but she was educated back east and very, very articulate. And she wrote a long account from the perspective of the wife of a cavalry officer. Her husband was moved around to posts all over Arizona, and back in those days, of course, they didn't have air conditioning, and conditions are pretty brutal in the desert in the summer. But anyway, she wrote the book is very, very. It's a very interesting glimpse into how life would have been in those days, and I've read it. And I enjoyed it a lot, and we recommend it to a lot of people. But anyway, Mary liked that book. And as part of that book, when Martha Summerhays when they were first posted to Arizona, they took what was then a cavalry road from what is now present-day Winslow over to what was called then Fort Verde, which is now the town of Camp Verde. And Fort Verde State Park is still there, and some of the cavalry buildings from the cavalry post are still there. Anyway, there was a freight road that had been pioneered across that area, and it was called the Hopi Chavez Trail. And so she was researching that road, and so she had a little vehicle. I was trying to remember what kind of vehicle it was. I think it might have been an old box Cherokee, but I don't remember exactly. But anyway, she was up there and she was trying to find that road. And she'd go out there all by herself. And by that time, she was already in her late 70s, early 80s. But she got back to she got back to the highway one time up there, and she got out of her vehicle and she was going to take a picture. Well, she forgot to put the vehicle in park, and it rolled backwards, and she was standing by the driver's door, and the door caught her and knocked her down, and she ended up breaking her arm, and the car rolled down the hill into a ditch. Well, she managed to get herself to her feet, and she flagged down a passing car on the highway because she was right where the back road met the highway. And so they helped her get her car out of the ditch, and she drove herself with her broken arm back to town and to the hospital. Well, after that, her son Ned, he told her he absolutely forbid her going out by herself anymore. And and probably for good reason. She could have easily been killed when that happened, but she's a tough little gal, and so she survived it. And after her arm got to healing up and she started feeling better, she wanted to get back out there. Well, Ned told her under no uncertain terms should she go out there by herself. And he was a busy guy, so he didn't have a lot of time to take her. So somewhere along the line, she called me up at the tour company, and she wanted to know if she could charter me for the day. And so yeah, I did that occasionally. And so basically, so then she told her son that I was going to be the driver and that she was going to go out with me. Well, Ned knew who I was. We knew of each other. We weren't acquaintances or anything like that, but we knew who each other was. And so anyway, he said, "Well, yeah, if you're going to go with Chuck, that's okay." So anyway, we went looking for this old military road, and that military road was called the Hopi Chavez Trail. And basically, it wasn't used for very many years. What ended up happening is eventually the railroad got built to Ash Fork. And once the railroad got built to Ash Fork, it was a lot easier to just take everything by train and then unload it there and take it down to Fort Whipple at Prescott, cross country there, just go down through Chino Valley. And so the Hopi Chavez Trail is a military supply route. It just got abandoned. Nobody cared about it, and then it kind of fell into obscurity. Well, for whatever reasons, she got pretty interested in it. And one of the reasons why is because it was pioneered to follow an Indian trail, a Hopi trail. That's where the name, the Hopi Chavez, came from. And the Hopi name for it was the Palakwapi Trail. And basically, at the time, there was a branch of the Hopi tribe that lived down near what is now Sedona. And eventually, for whatever reason, I think they might have got run out by the other local tribes, but they ended up pulling back up into the mesas up where they live now still. And that's their ancestral homeland. And, they've been there for, goodness gracious, how many years? They're descendants of the ancestral Puebloans, we believe. So, we're talking thousands of years maybe. Well, anyway, what ended up happening is the cavalry, when they were looking for a shortcut to bring supplies to Fort Verde from Winslow, what is now Winslow, and so they heard about this Indian trail, and they sent a Lieutenant Chavez with a troop of cavalry soldiers up to find it. Well, Lieutenant Chavez, basically, the short story is that he made 2 long trips up into there trying to follow this Indian trail, and both times he got sidetracked and he didn't find it. He didn't find his way through. Well, finally somebody did, and they actually named it after him, and there was a good chance he never even was on it. But anyway, so she wanted to find the old wagon road. Well, how do you find a wagon road? Well, you have a pretty good idea when it went from point A to point B that somewhere along the line you should be able to cross it, and you should be able to figure out what it is. So how do you tell the difference between an old wagon road and a more modern road, like a logging trail or something? Well, it's pretty easy, actually. They're only about 4 feet wide, and they didn't use graders, they didn't use machinery, and every rock is moved by hand. So you won't have a smooth line of rocks along the side of it like you would from a grader blade. Plus, the thing's only like 4 feet wide. And so once you train yourself, look for that, you can find them. Well, I took Merri up, and we went looking for this old road, and we found it. We found it over near I-17 north of the present-day Cavalry, when we found it where it crossed the interstate. And so we started backtracking. And there's a lake up there called Stoneman Lake, and in Martha Summerhay's book, she talks about Stoneman Lake. It's a volcanic crater with a lake in the bottom, and it's pretty scenic, and it's kind of a nice area over there. And so she talked about they did a layover there, and so we knew that the road that she went through there. And there was another place called Rattlesnake Tank, and we actually went and found Rattlesnake Tank. I don't know how many water tanks are named Rattlesnake Tank, but that's one of them. And we found the road there. And so we'd found it in several places. And finally, we went clear back south of Winslow, where it came through Chavez Pass, which is also named for that Lieutenant Chavez, who may never have been there. But we knew that the road came through Chavez Pass, and we went and we found it there. So I went out with Merri a total of 4 times. And after the second time, I realized that it was pretty expensive for her to rent what I had to have for the truck for the day and all this kind of stuff. And so finally, after that, I told her, I said, Merri, I'll tell you what, this has been a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. I enjoy your company. And let's just take my Jeep. You pay for the gas and you buy me lunch, and I'll be the Jeep and the driver. So the first 2 times we took my tour truck out, but then after that, we took the Jeep out. And at the time, I had the top removed from it for the summer. It was a wide open Jeep. So, both of us driving out it was blue, painted sky blue. So sky blue colored CJ7. And, we're out there bouncing around the backcountry looking for this road. And we found it several different places going across there. And we figured out what the route was. And so that made it easier to find it the next time. And so we backtracked that route quite a bit. And we had a lot of fun during that several months that we went out and doing that. But make a long story short, Merri never did write her book, and she passed away probably 10 years ago now. But thinking about seeing Ned had passed away and seeing his obituary, kind of like a lot of things, it triggered the memory. And thinking about, Merri with his, she's a little thing, weighed probably, 100 pounds soaking wet, and probably 5 feet tall, but just an absolute little bundle of energy and fun to be around. And, I always had this big smile on her face whenever we were going someplace in the Jeep. But I remember Merri and I remember Ned, and I thought you might be interested in hearing this story. So she never did get a chance to write her book, but we had a lot of fun up there doing the research on it. So I think for now, I'll tell you as I always do, take care of each other and love each other. And I wanted to come out, and I don't know when I'll upload this, but I wanted to come out and record it anyway while it was all fresh in my mind. And it was just thinking about the big smile on her face, put a smile on mine this afternoon. And so I thought I would share that experience with you. So until we talk again, I'll be in another one here, probably pretty quick. I've had trouble keep my thoughts about me for the past few days, but as you can tell, I've shot 2 of them today, so I think I'm kind of got over that drought for a little bit maybe. But for right now, until I catch you again, I'm just going to tell you, peace out.